What if the most advanced fleet in the galaxy fell? Not to lasers, not to nukes, but to simple rocks. How did humanity turn an asteroid field into the deadliest trap in history? I remember the day they laughed at our railguns. The day the mighty Dominion fleet positioned themselves at the edge of our solar system, their massive dreadnoughts gleaming like metal moons against the backdrop of stars. Their commander's voice crackled through our comms, dripping with disdain. No shields, no energy weapons, just rocks. But sometimes it's not about the weapon. It's about how you use it. I was Captain Eliza Chen of the UES Defiant, then third in command of Earth's pitiful defense force, as the Dominion propaganda called us. The truth, we were anything but pitiful. We were patient. We were prepared. And after 3 years of meticulous planning while the Dominion expanded across the Orion Arm, we were finally ready to show the galaxy why Earth had survived when so many other worlds had fallen. The morning of the battle, I remember standing in my quarters looking at the photo of my daughter Maya on her first day at the academy. I told her the same thing my mother told me. Humanity didn't crawl out of the mud by being the strongest or the fastest. We survived by being the most adaptable. As I pinned my captain's bars to my collar, I wondered if today would prove that philosophy right, or if it would be the last day of human civilization. The calm that settled over me in that moment surprised even myself. I had witnessed the aftermath of Dominion pacification firsthand during the rescue mission to Proxima Centauri's outer colonies. The images still haunted my dreams. Shattered cities, irradiated farmlands, and the hollow-eyed survivors who spoke of warships that blocked out the sun before the firing began. By all logic, I should have been terrified facing that same force. Yet somehow I wasn't. Perhaps it was the confidence that came from knowing what they didn't know. Or perhaps it was something deeper. The quiet certainty that has carried our species through ice ages, plagues, world wars, and the desperate early years of space colonization. Whatever it was, when the alert klaxon sounded, I was ready. The alert that brought me running to the bridge came at 0627 Earth Standard Time. Long-range sensors had detected the Dominion war fleet dropping out of FTL just beyond Neptune's orbit. Over 200 vessels, led by the infamous dreadnought Eternal Dominance, a ship that had glassed 3 inhabited worlds in the Procyon system just last year. Battle stations. I'd ordered, my voice steadier than I felt. And get me Commander Cross. The bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency, systems coming online as the view screens filled with tactical data. Lieutenant Rivera at the weapons station, her fingers dancing across controls that would be useless in the coming battle. Ensign Okafor at navigation, plotting courses we wouldn't need to follow. Chief Engineer Tenzin monitoring systems that were mere window dressing for what was about to unfold. They all knew the plan. They all understood their roles in what history would later call the most audacious military deception since the Trojan horse. And like me, they carried the weight of knowing that if we failed, there would be no second chance for humanity. I was there on the bridge of the UES Defiant when Admiral Kareth Voss first appeared on our view screens. His skin was the pale blue of a dying star adorned with the ceremonial battle markings of 50 conquered worlds. Behind him stood Vice Admiral Joran Threx, whose eyes darted nervously across our formation. Unlike his commander, Threx seemed unsettled by our stillness. Voss belonged to the Noxari, an ancient species from the inner systems of the Orion Arm. They had evolved in the harsh radiation of binary stars, developing natural armor and extraordinary regenerative abilities. Their civilization had mastered spaceflight when humans were still figuring out agriculture. And for most of their history, they had been content to explore rather than conquer. That changed with the rise of the Dominion, a militaristic faction that gained control 3 centuries ago, transforming a peaceful species into the galaxy's most feared predators. Under Dominion rule, the Noxari had subjugated 17 sentient species, strip-mined dozens of worlds, and established a reign of terror that spanned nearly a quarter of the explored galaxy. Your species had such promise, Voss said, mandibles clicking with amusement. Yet here you stand with your primitive railguns and chemical thrusters, while we command vessels that could swallow your cities whole. I'd studied Voss extensively in the War College simulations. Born on Vexus Prime, third son of the genetically enhanced warrior bloodline, rose through the Dominion ranks by never losing a battle, and by executing any subordinate who questioned his tactics. His species evolved in a binary star system with intense radiation. Their natural armor made them nearly impervious to the energy weapons most races developed. Perhaps that's why they never truly appreciated the simple physics of kinetic impacts. The intelligence briefings on Voss painted a picture of tactical brilliance coupled with profound cultural arrogance. He had never encountered a problem he couldn't solve with overwhelming force, a philosophy that had served him well in campaigns against the technologically advanced but numerically inferior Proxima colonies. His string of victories had made him the Dominion's most decorated fleet commander, and its most dangerous. Yet for all his tactical genius, Voss had one critical blind spot: he couldn't conceive of defeat at the hands of what he considered lesser species. This arrogance had led him to underestimate the Arcturians, who managed to evacuate 90% of their population before his fleet arrived. It had caused him to dismiss the Centauri resistance fighters, who continued to wage guerrilla warfare years after official pacification. And now it was leading him to underestimate Earth. The Dominion fleet was everything the intelligence reports had described, and worse. Ships the size of Manhattan Island powered by artificial singularities. Weapons that could strip atmospheres in minutes. Shields that had repelled every conventional attack from 17 different civilizations. Our scanners detailed their fleet composition in crisp, terrifying clarity. 43 main battlecruisers, 97 destroyer-class vessels, 62 specialized bombardment platforms, and the pride of their fleet, the 17-kilometer-long Eternal Dominance, a ship so massive it created its own gravitational field. The power readings from their engines alone outmatched our entire planetary defense grid. Their ships were marvels of engineering, each one a testament to centuries of technological advancement. The dreadnoughts featured quantum-locked armor capable of redistributing energy from impacts across their entire structure. The destroyers carried temporal disruptors that could quite literally age targeted materials by centuries and seconds. The bombardment platforms housed singularity projectors that compressed matter until it collapsed under its own gravitational forces. Against such technology, conventional warfare was suicide. The Arcturians had learned this when their energy weapons barely scratched Dominion shields. The Proxima colonies had discovered it when their advanced drone swarms were neutralized by simple electromagnetic pulses. And the Centauri Collective had paid the ultimate price when their planetary defense grid, the most sophisticated in the Orion Arm, was systematically dismantled by targeted gravitational distortions. Status of the civilian evacuation, I asked my XO quietly. 78% complete, Captain, Lieutenant Commander Jackson replied. The lunar bunkers can't take much more. I nodded grimly. We'd been evacuating Earth's population to the subterranean lunar colonies for months, ever since our deep space intelligence confirmed the Dominion had marked Earth for exemplary pacification, their euphemism for total planetary destruction. The evacuation had been conducted under the guise of lunar mining initiatives and long-term colonization projects. Commercial transport ships, retrofitted cruise liners, and even privately owned spacecraft had been pressed into service. Millions of civilians had been told they were participating in readiness drills or lunar development projects. The truth, that Earth itself might soon be uninhabitable, had been kept from the general public to prevent mass panic. Even now, with the Dominion fleet at our doorstep, most citizens on Earth believed they were experiencing an extended solar flare warning, keeping them in underground shelters that might offer some minimal protection if our plan failed. The Dominion's opening transmission cut through our strategic channel, bypassing our encryption as if it were child's play. People of Earth, Admiral Voss began his translator, making his multi-tone voice sound artificially pleasant. Your reputation for resourcefulness precedes you. Unlike the Arcturians or the Proxima colonists, I'm offering you terms before the cleansing begins. On screen, he made a gesture that among his people signified magnanimous generosity. To humans who had studied their culture, it translated roughly as, I'll allow you to be useful slaves. Surrender your planet and its resources. Provide us with 10 million of your healthiest specimens for labor redistribution. Do this, and we will spare your major population centers from orbital bombardment. What Voss didn't mention, what we knew from intercepted communications, was that labor redistribution meant genetic modification and neural conditioning that left little of the original person intact. The specimens would be transformed into biological tools their humanity systematically erased to make them more efficient workers. And the promise to spare population centers was equally hollow. Those centers would become Dominion outposts, the remaining humans serving as a convenient local workforce until they were replaced by more efficient alternatives. Around me, I could see the bridge crew's expressions harden. We'd all seen the aftermath of Dominion Mercy on the refugee ships we'd taken in from Proxima Centauri. Those who surrendered didn't fare any better than those who fought. They just lived long enough to witness the destruction of everything they loved. I thought of my daughter Maya, now serving on the UES Thermopylae as a junior tactical officer. She was part of the thin defensive line we had established, a line that to the Dominion must have seemed laughably inadequate. If they had known the truth, they might have respected our strategy. Instead, they saw only what we wanted them to see: a desperate, outmatched civilization making its last stand with obsolete technology. And what did we have? Missiles, railguns, nuclear warheads, technology that hadn't fundamentally changed in a century. At least that's what they thought. What the Dominion didn't know, what we'd kept hidden even from our own population, was Project Sisyphus. 3 years of secret preparations hidden behind a flurry of seemingly routine asteroid mining operations. 3 years of manufacturing specialized fusion drives in underground facilities on Mars. 3 years of precise gravitational calculations by the greatest minds of our generation. The project's name had been Commander Cross's idea, a reference to the ancient Greek myth of Sisyphus, condemned to roll a boulder up a hill for eternity. Except in our version, Cross had explained to the Joint Chiefs, the boulder rolls back down on our enemies. In the officers' mess the night before, Commander Cross had quoted an ancient Earth philosopher to our gathered captains. Where there is a will to power, there is a way to victory. For 3 years, we've been finding that way, disguising our true strategy behind a facade of conventional military buildup. We had constructed new ships, yes, but they were decoys designed to draw attention from our real work. We had developed new weapon systems, certainly, but they were calculated to appear threatening enough to command respect, while remaining insufficient to actually defeat the Dominion. Everything we did publicly was part of an elaborate deception designed to convince the Dominion we were preparing to fight them conventionally. Meanwhile, in the shadows of the asteroid belt, the real plan took shape. I caught Threx's glance at me through the view screen. The Vice Admiral's secondary eyes, the ones their species used to detect subtle energy fluctuations, kept darting to our tactical displays. He knew something wasn't right. He could sense we weren't afraid enough. Threx was younger than Voss, from a different generation of Noxari officers. Intelligence suggested he had privately questioned some of the Dominion's more brutal tactics. There were even rumors he had advocated for diplomatic solutions to the Arcturian conflict before being overruled by the High Command. His wariness now might have been simple tactical caution, or perhaps something deeper, an instinctive recognition that humans were more dangerous than their technology suggested. When the Dominion's tactical officer magnified the image of Earth's defensive fleet, I heard the unmistakable sound of laughter erupting across their bridge. 43 shifts against their hundreds. Our largest vessel, the newly commissioned UES Thermopylae, was barely 1/20th the size of their flagship. Our fleet's formation, a standard Fibonacci defensive pattern, would have appeared textbook to their military analysts. Nothing innovative, nothing surprising. Just what you'd expect from a species fighting its first major interstellar war, following protocols developed through limited skirmishes with much less advanced opponents. Captain Chen, my tactical officer, whispered, "They're deploying their vanguard in standard Dominion assault formation." I nodded. "Signal the fleet, defensive pattern Omega, and inform Commander Cross that the Dominion has entered the primary engagement zone." Defensive pattern Omega wasn't in any official Earth fleet manual. It was a formation designed specifically for this moment, positioning our ships to appear vulnerable while ensuring they would be well clear of the coming asteroid paths. To the Dominion, it would look like we were spreading out in a desperate attempt to avoid being targeted en masse. In reality, we were clearing the battlefield for what was to come. The pieces were moving into place. All we needed was for them to come just a little closer. Commander Nathan Cross stood beside me, his weathered face betraying nothing as he activated the comm system. His message was brief, just 5 words. "Turn back. This is your only warning." The bridge of the Dominion flagship erupted in laughter. Voss's mandibles spread wide in what passed for a smile in his species. Or what human, you'll throw rocks at us? The irony of his question, how painfully close it came to the truth, almost made me break my own disciplined expression. If he had known just how literal his taunt was, perhaps the Dominion fleet would have scattered then and there. Instead, they continued their advanced confidence unshaken. Cross didn't respond. He simply nodded to our tactical officer and closed the channel. I've known Nathan Cross for 15 years. We'd served together during the Mars Rebellion, fought side by side against the Europa separatists, and survived the quantum storm disaster at the Saturn research station. I've seen him face down pirate fleets, navigate the quantum storms of Titan, and broker peace with the Centauri Collective when war seemed inevitable. But I'd never seen him this calm before a battle. It wasn't confidence, it was certainty. Cross was a legend in the fleet, the orphaned son of colonists killed during the first extraterrestrial contact gone wrong. His parents had been scientists on the Jupiter research station when the Proxima refugees arrived fleeing the early Dominion expansion. What should have been a peaceful first contact turned tragic when a misunderstanding led to an exchange of fire. Cross, just 7 years old, watched his parents die while helping the Proxima children escape to the emergency shuttles. That experience had shaped him in ways that defied conventional trauma. Rather than turning bitter or seeking revenge, Cross had developed an almost preternatural understanding of alien psychology and a deep, abiding commitment to interspecies cooperation. He'd risen through the ranks despite political opposition, military setbacks, and personal tragedy. When his wife and daughter died in the Ganymede terrorist attack 6 years ago, many thought his career was over. Instead, he threw himself into his work with a focus that bordered on obsession. I still remember finding him in his quarters the night after the funeral, surrounded by star charts and ancient military texts. "The Dominion's coming, Eliza," he'd told me, his voice hollow but determined. "Maybe not next year, maybe not for a decade, but they're coming, and when they do, conventional defense won't save us." That night had been the genesis of what would eventually become Project Sisyphus. While others focused on building bigger ships and more powerful weapons, Cross began quietly studying the fundamental physics of space warfare, searching for vulnerabilities in the seemingly invincible Dominion approach. When the first Dominion scout ships were detected in our system 3 years ago, it was Cross who approached the Joint Chiefs with Engineer Haynes' radical proposal. I still remember the recording of that meeting leaked through the officer corps. "They expect us to fight like everyone else has fought, with ships against ships, energy against energy," he'd said. But Earth has always prevailed by changing the rules of engagement. From the ancient Greeks at Salamis, to the Battle of Britain, from guerrilla warfare to digital countermeasures, we win by refusing to fight on the enemy's terms. The Joint Chiefs had been skeptical. Admiral Takada argued for conventional fleet expansion. General Mbeki pushed for diplomatic solutions through the Galactic Council. But Cross had won them over with a simple demonstration, a miniaturized version of Project Sisyphus, that destroyed a decommissioned cruiser in high Earth orbit. Using a captured Dominion shield generator, the test had proven conclusively that their defensive technology, while nearly impervious to energy weapons and conventional projectiles, had no answer for the raw kinetic energy of large masses at significant velocities. The demonstration had been classified at the highest level, but it had changed the entire strategic approach of Earth's defense forces overnight. Resources were diverted from conventional shipbuilding to the secret Asteroid project. The best minds in physics, engineering, and strategic planning were sequestered in underground facilities on Mars and Ceres. And Cross himself had vanished from public view for months at a time and overseeing critical phases of the project while maintaining the elaborate deception that kept the Dominion from discovering our true preparations. Now, watching him stand before the view screen, I realized that everything, his personal losses, his military career, his single-minded focus these past 3 years, had been leading to this moment. Cross hadn't just been preparing a military strategy, he'd been orchestrating humanity's survival. "Cross, you're either the bravest human I've ever met or the craziest," I said quietly. He turned to me, the ghost of a smile playing around his lips. "History will decide, Captain Chen, but I'd rather be remembered as the crazy fool who tried than the reasonable man who surrendered." His calm was contagious. Around the bridge, I could see the crew drawing strength from his certainty. These men and women had lived for years with the knowledge that they might be Earth's last defense against an overwhelming force. They had carried the burden of secrecy, unable to tell even their families the true nature of what we were planning. And now they watched with steady hands and clear eyes as the moment of truth approached. Through the view screen, I could see Voss conferring with his tactical officers. The Dominion fleet was reorganizing, spreading into a wider attack formation. They were preparing for the conventional battle they expected. Squadrons to attack our orbital defenses, specialized units to target our ground installations, bombardment platforms positioning to begin atmospheric stripping. Their positioning was textbook Dominion, the same tactics they had used against the Arcturians and the Proxima colonies. First, neutralize defensive capabilities, then target civilian infrastructure to break morale, finally offer mercy to survivors willing to accept subjugation. It was a playbook they had refined across 17 conquests, a method that had never failed them. Until today. The standard Dominion attack formation, while perfect for conventional space warfare, created ideal target clusters for what we were about to unleash. Their ships positioned to maximize fire coverage and minimize friendly fire incidents had inadvertently arranged themselves into optimal impact zones for our asteroid weapons. They're following the exact approach Victor Engineer Han predicted. Lieutenant Rivera noted a hint of awe in her voice. Han studied every recorded Dominion engagement, Cross replied. She built a predictive model of their tactical decision-making. Looks like it was accurate down to the kilometer. The thought of Engineer Han reminded me of how unlikely our current strategy had seemed at first. A civilian contractor from the asteroid mining operations, she had no military training, no tactical experience, and none of the credentials that typically earned attention from the Joint Chiefs. Yet her insight that our greatest weakness might actually be our greatest strength had changed everything. Primitive technology doesn't mean primitive thinking, Han had argued in that first contentious meeting. If we can't match their shields, their weapons, or their propulsion systems, then we stop trying. Instead, we use what we have in abundance, mass and the ability to move it. They had no idea what was actually coming. Sir, I whispered, they're advancing into the kill zone. Cross nodded. Send the signal to Chief Engineer Han. The memory of Mira Han flashed through my mind. 3 years earlier, when the first Dominion scout ships appeared at the edge of our system, she had approached the Joint Chiefs with what seemed like madness. I remember her words exactly. They expect us to fight with ships. Let's fight with planets instead. Mira Han wasn't even supposed to be at that meeting. A brilliant but unconventional engineer from the asteroid mining operations on Ceres, she'd been brought to Earth to consult on resource allocation for fleet expansion. But when she saw the preliminary reports on Dominion shield technology, she'd burst into the classified briefing with a wild-eyed intensity that nearly got her arrested. Han's background made her uniquely qualified to develop our unconventional strategy. Born on a mining colony in the asteroid belt, she had grown up understanding the practical challenges of moving large masses through space. Her parents, both engineers with the Pan-Asian Mining Consortium, had taught her to see asteroids not as obstacles or mere resources, but as potential tools. When the Jupiter incident left thousands of colonists stranded with failing life support, it was a young Mira Han who had proposed using modified mining equipment to redirect a small ice-rich asteroid into orbit around the station, providing the water needed to sustain life until rescue arrived. That early success had marked her as a problem solver who thought beyond conventional approaches. Her adult career had followed a similar pattern, finding elegant solutions that others overlooked. She had revolutionized asteroid mining by developing a new approach to core extraction that reduced structural instability. She had designed the navigation systems for the first manned mission to the Kuiper Belt. And when the Proxima Centauri refugees arrived with stories of Dominion conquest, she had quietly begun studying the physics of space warfare, looking for vulnerabilities that others might have missed. Their shields can repel any energy weapon we throw at them, she'd explained, scrolling through simulations on her tablet. They can dissipate nuclear blasts. They can even deflect most conventional projectiles. But there's one thing no shield ever built can stop. She'd pulled up an image of a nickel-iron asteroid approximately 2 kilometers in diameter. Mass, she'd said simply, enough mass moving fast enough and no technology in the galaxy can save you. It's just physics. The brilliance of Hahn's insight wasn't just the use of asteroids as weapons. It was the recognition that the fundamental physics of mass and velocity would trump even the most advanced alien technology. Energy shields could disperse laser fire and plasma weapons. They could neutralize the electromagnetic effects of nuclear detonations. But they could not violate the basic law of conservation of momentum. When an object with the mass of a small mountain strikes a spaceship at a significant fraction of light speed, no defense system can fully absorb or deflect the kinetic energy involved. The shields might hold for a microsecond before overloading. After that, it's just raw physics, an irresistible force meeting a very movable object. For 3 years under the cover of routine mining operations, engineer Hahn had been attaching fusion drives to asteroids throughout the belt. Not just any asteroids, specifically selected nickel-iron masses, each one precisely calculated for maximum impact. Over 5,000 of them positioned strategically throughout our system. The operation had required unprecedented secrecy. We'd established fake mining companies, created elaborate cover stories about resource extraction, even manufactured artificial shortages of certain metals to explain the increased activity in the belt. Special Forces teams eliminated the few Dominion reconnaissance drones that ventured too close to the operation. The asteroid selection process itself had been a monumental task. Hahn's team had developed specific criteria based on composition, structural integrity, mass, and initial position. They needed asteroids with high metal content for maximum density. They needed objects large enough to cause catastrophic damage, but small enough to be accurately controlled by the fusion drives. And they needed initial positions that would allow for optimal attack vectors when the Dominion fleet arrived. Their work had been complicated by the need to avoid detection. Every asteroid modification had to appear consistent with normal mining operations when observed from a distance. The fusion drives themselves were disguised as standard mining equipment or debris collection systems. And the actual targeting systems were kept dormant until the final activation sequence, peering to external scans as simple navigational beacons. Most challenging was keeping it hidden from our own people. Only a few hundred individuals knew the full scope of Project Sisyphus. The public story was that we were building conventional defenses, new ships, orbital platforms, ground-based weapons. In reality, nearly 80% of our military budget had been diverted to Hahn's asteroid project. This deception extended to our own military. Most fleet officers believed they were training for conventional space combat against the Dominion. Only the highest-ranking commanders knew their true role would be to serve as a convincing decoy, drawing the Dominion fleet into the perfect position for the asteroid assault. I remember visiting the Ceres command center where Hahn coordinated the effort. Massive holographic displays tracked each asteroid, each fusion drive, each calculated trajectory. Thousands of variables constantly updated, all converging on one perfect moment. The command center itself was a marvel of engineering, built deep within Ceres to shield it from detection, powered by fusion reactors and staffed by a team of the most brilliant minds humanity had to offer. Physicists calculated optimal impact vectors, engineers refined the fusion drive designs. Military strategists analyzed Dominion tactics to predict their fleet movements. And at the center of it all was Hahn, a diminutive woman with perpetually disheveled hair and eyes that burned with a visionary's intensity. She worked 20-hour days, subsisted mainly on synthetic coffee, and slept on a cot in her office. Her single-minded focus had transformed a theoretical concept into humanity's last best hope for survival. The beauty of it, Hahn had explained to me during my inspection tour, is that it's unstoppable once initiated. The fusion drives will accelerate the asteroids to a significant fraction of light speed. At that velocity, the kinetic energy is, well, astronomical. She'd smiled at her own pun. Even if they detect the asteroids early, they can't destroy enough of them to matter. Fragment an asteroid at these speeds, and you just create a shotgun blast instead of a rifle shot. The mathematics of the attack were both simple and terrifying. A nickel-iron asteroid 2 kilometers in diameter, traveling at 15% of light speed, would impact with energy equivalent to millions of nuclear weapons. No shield system could absorb that much kinetic energy. No hull material could withstand that level of impact. And no fleet, no matter how technologically advanced, could intercept thousands of such objects approaching from multiple vectors. Now, as Voss's fleet moved deeper into our gravity well, The first sensors began to light up. Movement detected in Sector 7, reported our tactical officer Lieutenant Rivera. Multiple objects leaving the asteroid belt. On our screens, the dots appeared, slowly at first, then more rapidly as the fusion drives ignited. 5,000 asteroids, each one the size of a skyscraper, beginning their carefully orchestrated dance toward the Dominion fleet. The bridge of the Defiant fell silent as we watched the telemetry. Each asteroid's trajectory had been calculated years in advance, accounting for orbital mechanics, solar radiation pressure, and the projected positions of the Dominion fleet. It was a three-dimensional ballet of mass and velocity, breathtaking in its complexity. The first wave, approximately 800 asteroids, had been positioned in the inner belt closest to Mars. Their fusion drives were the most powerful, designed to achieve maximum acceleration in the shortest time. These would be the first to strike, targeting the forward elements of the Dominion fleet. The second wave, over 2,000 asteroids, came from the central belt. Their trajectories were more complex, designed to intercept the main body of the Dominion force after the initial impact created the expected evasive maneuvers. The third wave originated from the outer belt and the Trojan points around Jupiter. These would arrive last, cutting off retreat routes and eliminating any surviving ships. And a final reserve, approximately 500 asteroids, remained on standby, their targeting systems ready to adapt to unexpected developments in the battle. Fusion drives operating at 98.7% efficiency, reported the engineering station. Acceleration curves matching projections. I glanced at the status board. Our fleet had begun its carefully choreographed withdrawal, creating a false impression of retreat to draw the Dominion deeper into the trap. Earth's orbital defense platforms had powered down their main weapons, appearing to conserve energy for a last stand. The deception was working perfectly. Dominion tacticians, seeing our withdrawal, would interpret it as a standard defensive repositioning, pulling back to consolidate forces around Earth itself. They would advance to pursuit range, bringing their entire fleet into the kill zone we had established. On the tactical display, I could see confusion spreading through the Dominion formation as their sensors detected the first waves of incoming asteroids. Their fleet's neat attack pattern began to show signs of disorder. "They're scanning the asteroids," Rivera reported, trying to determine if they're weapons platforms. Cross smiled thinly. "In a manner of speaking, they are." The Dominion's initial confusion was understandable. In all their centuries of warfare, they had never encountered asteroids being used as weapons. Their tactical doctrine classified natural objects as navigation hazards, not threats. By the time their sensors confirmed the asteroids were on deliberate intercept courses, it would be too late to organize an effective response. As the asteroids accelerated, their fusion drives burned with the light of miniature suns. From Earth, they would have appeared as new stars in the night sky, brief flares of human defiance against the darkness. I thought about the civilians on Earth and Luna, watching these lights appear without understanding their significance. To them, it might have seemed like a meteor shower or an unusual astronomical phenomenon. Few would recognize it as the most important military action in human history. First wave reaching 5% light speed, Rivera announced. 7%, 8%. The Dominion's communication channels erupted with chatter as their commanders began to realize something was wrong. Their forward scout ships were already executing emergency maneuvers, trying to evade the incoming objects. "They're beginning to understand," Cross said quietly, "but it's already too late." I could almost picture the scene on the Dominion flagship. The initial dismissal of the asteroid movement as a natural phenomenon, the growing concern as more sensor data arrived, the moment of horrified realization when they understood the true nature of what was approaching them. By the time Admiral Voss recognized the threat, the first wave of asteroids would be less than 10 minutes from impact. Too close for effective countermeasures, too numerous to evade, and too massive to destroy. The trap we had spent 3 years preparing was about to spring shut. "Impossible," came Voss's voice over the still open channel. "You can't possibly have enough ships to—" "They're not ships," Cross interrupted, "and they're moving at 8% light speed now." The panic in the Dominion fleet was immediate and visible. Their formation broke as captains tried to maneuver their massive vessels out of the paths of the oncoming rocks. But Han's calculations had been perfect. For every evasive action, 3 asteroids adjusted course. The Dominion's initial response followed their standard protocol for unexpected threats. The fleet began to disperse, reducing the chance of multiple ships being hit by the same weapon. Under normal circumstances, this would have been the correct tactical decision. Against conventional weapons, spreading out minimizes casualties. Against our asteroid assault, it played directly into our strategy. The dispersion pattern they adopted had been predicted by Hain's tactical simulations. As the Dominion ships scattered, they moved precisely into the paths of secondary and tertiary asteroid waves that had been positioned to intercept these exact evasion routes. Targeting their forward ships with main batteries, Voss commanded, his voice now tight with a concern. Their weapons flared in magnificent beams of coherent energy that could slice through battle cruisers. I watched as one asteroid, roughly the size of a small office building, was struck directly by the Dominion flagship's main cannon. The surface layer vaporized instantly, creating a brilliant corona of superheated rock vapor. But the core of the asteroid, dense nickel iron, continued on its trajectory, barely slowed. Other asteroids simply absorbed the hits their mass barely affected. Some fragmented into smaller pieces, creating even more projectiles. The Dominion strategy, designed to counter conventional weapons and ships, was worse than useless against what we had unleashed. This was the fundamental miscalculation at the heart of Dominion military doctrine, the assumption that greater energy output would always triumph. Their entire approach to warfare was built around producing and directing more energy than their opponents. Their shields were designed to absorb or deflect energy weapons. Their tactical training emphasized energy management and projection. But now they faced a threat that operated on different principles entirely: the simple physics of mass and momentum. All their advanced energy weapons and all their sophisticated shield systems, all their tactical brilliance counted for nothing against the raw kinetic force of asteroids moving at a significant fraction of light speed. "Sir, the asteroids are accelerating beyond projected rates," Rivera reported, surprise evident in her voice. 10% light speed now." I looked to Han, who had joined us on the bridge during the initial deployment. She smiled with professional pride. "I may have made some last-minute improvements to the fusion drive efficiency." Han's modifications were characteristic of her approach, always refining, always improving, even as the plan was being executed. The increased velocity meant significantly greater kinetic energy at impact, and less time for the Dominion to attempt countermeasures. The tactical display showed the first close encounter, a Dominion frigate that had strayed from formation trying to establish a flanking position. Its captain had clearly not understood the threat in time. The asteroid, a particularly dense specimen selected from the outer belt, hit the frigate midship. There was no explosion in the conventional sense. At that velocity, the kinetic energy converted both asteroid and warship into a blinding flash of plasma that briefly outshone our sun. Where a warship had been, there was nothing but expanding hull and debris. "Impact analysis," Cross demanded. "Energy release equivalent to 247 megatons," the science officer replied. "Complete conversion of mass to energy at the impact point." The science officer's voice held a note of academic fascination despite the gravity of the moment. Darsh Samira Khalid had been one of the theoretical physicists who helped refine Han's initial calculations. Now she was witnessing the practical application of those theories, the transformation of complex matter into plasma through sheer kinetic force. The asteroid's relative velocity at impact was 11.2% of light speed, she continued. The energy release exceeded our models by approximately 3.8%. "Is that significant?" I asked. "For our purposes, Captain, it means the asteroids are even more effective than we predicted," she replied with professional detachment. "The increased efficiency will result in more complete destruction of targeted vessels." Voss's face reappeared on our view screen. Gone was the smug superiority, replaced by something I'd never expected to see from the Dominion: fear. "What have you done?" Voss's voice had lost all its contempt, replaced by horror. "Exactly what we said we'd do," Cross replied. "We warned you to turn back." I remember thinking about an ancient battle from Earth's history, how Persian Emperor Xerxes had sat upon his golden throne to watch his vast navy destroy the Greeks at Salamis, only to witness his own destruction instead. Voss was our Xerxes, watching in disbelief as his technological superiority meant nothing against a force as fundamental as physics. The Dominion's tactical response was impressive in its desperation. Their ships began firing indiscriminately, trying to destroy or deflect as many asteroids as possible. Some of their vessels linked shield systems, creating larger defensive bubbles. Others attempted to use smaller craft as sacrificial shields, hoping to detonate the asteroids at a safer distance. One Dominion destroyer even attempted a desperate FTL jump, despite the proximity to Earth's gravity well, a maneuver so dangerous it was forbidden by their own military protocols. The ship vanished in a flash of twisted space-time, likely destroyed by the gravitational shear stresses rather than reaching safety. Their more conventional tactics fared no better. Dominion point defense systems, designed to intercept missiles and small craft, were useless against the sheer mass of the asteroids. Their energy weapons could vaporize the surface layers of the incoming rocks, but couldn't significantly alter their trajectories. Even their most powerful gravitational manipulators, capable of moving small moons under normal circumstances, couldn't react quickly enough to deflect objects moving at such velocities. Second wave acceleration exceeding projections, Han reported. 12% light speed now. The tactical display showed the Dominion fleet's formation collapsing into chaos. Ships collided as captains executed emergency maneuvers. Their disciplined communication channels devolved into panicked crosstalk. A group of destroyers attempted to retreat and only to find their exit vector blocked by another wave of incoming asteroids. "They're trapped," I said, the realization finally sinking in. "This isn't just an attack. It's a perfect enclosed ambush." Cross nodded. Engineer Han's specialty, orbital mechanics. The asteroids aren't just weapons, they're a cage. Each wave is precisely calculated to cut off escape routes created by previous impacts. I looked at the tactical display with new understanding. It wasn't just thousands of asteroids moving toward the Dominion fleet. It was a three-dimensional net closing from all directions. The more they maneuvered, the more they exposed themselves to alternate vectors of attack. The more they destroyed, the more fragments they created in their immediate vicinity. Han had explained this aspect of the strategy during the planning phases, using a metaphor that stuck with me. "Think of it as a spherical fishing net," she had said. "Each asteroid is a knot in that net. The Dominion can break some knots, but the net itself will still close around them." The second wave of impacts began, a coordinated sequence that targeted the Dominion's largest vessels. Our sensors could barely process the energy being released. Where mighty warships had stood, brief artificial stars flared and died. The Dominion's vaunted technical superiority, the result of millennia of scientific advancement, meant nothing in the face of basic physics. Their shields, which could repel energy weapons, had no answer for kinetic energy on this scale. Their armor, resistant to even the most powerful conventional weapons, simply vaporized on impact. "Third wave entering terminal approach," Rivera announced. 15% light speed. By now, the Dominion fleet had abandoned any pretense of offensive action. Every ship was focused solely on survival. But as Cross had predicted, there was no escape. The asteroids kept coming, wave after precisely calculated wave. The inevitability of it was perhaps the most psychological, devastating aspect for the Dominion commanders. In traditional space combat, there was always a chance, a possibility of escape, surrender, or at least a heroic last stand. But the asteroid assault offered no such possibilities. It was implacable, unstoppable physics in motion. I thought of the ancient Greek tragedy that had given Project Sisyphus its name. The myth of a man condemned to roll a boulder up a hill for eternity, only to have it roll back down each time. Except in our version, the Dominion were the ones being crushed by that boulder over and over with no hope of reprieve. "What have you done?" Bruce's voice had lost all its contempt, replaced by horror. "We learn from history," Cross replied calmly. "Earth navies once used wooden ships against metal ones. Indigenous peoples used arrows against guns. We've always adapted to overcome technological disadvantages." Cross was referencing humanity's long history of asymmetric warfare, our species' tendency to find unconventional solutions when faced with superior force. From the guerrilla tactics of resistance fighters against occupying armies to the digital warfare of the early information age, humans had consistently shown an ability to identify and exploit weaknesses in seemingly invincible opponents. This isn't war, Voss protested. This is extinction. Interesting perspective, Cross replied, his voice remaining steady. Coming from the architect of the Proxima genocide and the Arcturian cleansing, the asteroids reached their targets in waves, 15% light speed now. Each impact released energy equivalent to thousands of nuclear weapons. The Dominion shields, designed to repel energy weapons and conventional explosives, offered no protection against simple Newtonian physics. I watched as Vice Admiral Threx tried to organize a retreat, but it was too late. The asteroids had been positioned to cut off their escape routes. This wasn't just an attack, it was a perfect trap 3 years in the making. Threx's efforts showed a level of tactical acumen that Voss seemed to lack in this crisis. The Vice Admiral had quickly recognized the nature of the threat and was attempting to coordinate a synchronized withdrawal using the largest remaining ships as shields for smaller vessels. His plan might have worked against a conventional attack. Against the asteroid assault, it merely rearranged the sequence of destruction. Cross, Voss's voice was desperate now. We can negotiate. We can offer technology resources. You mistook our patience for weakness, Cross replied, his voice still unnervingly calm. You mistook our resolve for foolishness. The bridge of the Defiant had fallen completely silent. Even breathing seemed too loud as we watched the systematic destruction of what had been the most powerful fleet in known space. The Dominion, conquerors of 17 systems, destroyers of civilizations, were being unmade before our eyes. I thought about the planets they had pacified. Proxima Centauri, New Eden, the Arcturian homeworld. Billions of lives extinguished because they hadn't been able to find a way to counter the Dominion's technological superiority. We had found that way not through better technology, but through a return to the most basic principles of physics that every spacefaring civilization knew but few truly respected. A memory from my childhood surfaced unexpectedly. My father taking me to see the ancient ruins of Machu Picchu during a rare Earth vacation. The Incas didn't have iron or wheels, he'd explained to 8-year-old me, but they built something that outlasted empires with far more advanced technology. Sometimes the simplest solutions are the most enduring. That was the fundamental insight behind Project Sisyphus, that sometimes the answer isn't more sophisticated technology, but a return to first principles. The Dominion had become so focused on energy weapons, shield harmonics, and quantum-locked armor that they had forgotten the simple reality of mass and velocity. Fourth wave impact imminent, Rivera announced, her voice barely above a whisper. 17% light speed. I'll never forget what happened next. The flagship of the Dominion, the Eternal Dominance, a vessel 17 kilometers long that had been the instrument of destruction for 3 civilizations, faced 3 asteroids converging from different vectors. Its shields flared brilliant purple as they strained against the incoming mass. For a moment, it seemed they might hold. Engineers later explained what we were seeing: the Dominion's most advanced shield system converting incoming kinetic energy into exotic particles that could be safely dispersed. It was brilliant technology far beyond Earth's capabilities. For a fraction of a second it worked. Then they collapsed one layer at a time, like tissue paper torn by an unstoppable hand. The asteroid struck in sequence. Bow, midship stern. The dreadnought didn't explode so much as it simply ceased to exist, converted into light and heat in scattered atoms. The view screen automatically dimmed to protect our vision from the intensity of the release. When it cleared, nothing remained of the mighty flagship except an expanding cloud of superheated plasma. Radiation spike, our science officer reported. Their singularity containment failed catastrophically. The Eternal Dominance had been powered by an artificial singularity, essentially a contained black hole that generated virtually unlimited energy. When the asteroid impacts disrupted the containment fields, that singularity was released, if only for a microsecond before evaporating in a burst of Hawking radiation. The resulting energy release was unlike anything we had anticipated. Mr. Khalid's voice was hushed with scientific awe. The singularity evaporation released energy equivalent to approximately 800 megatons. Combined with the kinetic impact energy, this is unprecedented. Voss was gone. The Eternal Dominance was gone. And all across the tactical display, The once mighty Dominion fleet was disappearing one ship at a time as the relentless waves of asteroids continued their work. The destruction wasn't just physical, it was psychological. The Dominion had built their entire civilization, their entire identity around the concept of technological superiority. They were the most advanced species in known space with weapons and defenses beyond the comprehension of lesser races. That certainty, the bedrock of their imperial ambitions, was being systematically shattered before our eyes. Status report, Cross demanded. 93% of Dominion vessels confirmed destroyed. Rivera replied, checking her console. Remaining ships are critically damaged and unable to maneuver. The survivors were mostly smaller vessels that had managed to shelter in the shadow of larger ships using the debris fields as makeshift shields. Even these had suffered significant damage. Hull breaches, life support failures, propulsion system collapses. They were effectively dead in space, posing no further threat. Cross nodded, then opened a channel to the surviving Dominion vessels. "This is Commander Nathan Cross of Earth Defense Forces. Your fleet is destroyed. Your commander is dead. Any ship that powers down weapons and accepts boarding parties will be permitted to surrender. You have 60 seconds to complete." His offer of surrender was not something we had discussed in the planning sessions. Project Sisyphus had been designed as a total extinction event for the Dominion fleet. There had been no provisions for survivors or prisoners. Yet Cross, even after orchestrating the most devastating military action in human history, still found room for mercy. Across the tactical display, the energy signatures of the remaining Dominion vessels began to dim as they powered down their weapons. Not a single ship attempted to continue fighting. Even the proudest warrior race knows when it faces extinction. "Divert reserve asteroids to safe trajectories," Cross ordered. "The battle is over." With these words, the final wave of asteroids, our strategic reserve, was redirected away from the battlefield. Their fusion drives adjusted their courses toward empty space where they would eventually burn out their fuel and become ordinary objects once more. Within 22 minutes of the first asteroid impact, the entire Dominion extermination fleet was gone. A force that had conquered 17 star systems that had seemed unstoppable for decades had been utterly broken by rocks with engines. "Contact Luna Command," Cross ordered. "Inform them that the threat has been neutralized. Civilian evacuation can stand down." The message would bring immeasurable relief to the millions sheltering in the lunar bunkers and underground facilities on Earth. Families that had been separated during the hasty evacuation could be reunited. Children who had been told they were participating in emergency drills would soon learn the truth about how close humanity had come to extinction and how decisively we had averted that fate. Han was looking at her tablet, tears streaming down her face. "It worked," she whispered. "It actually worked." There was something profoundly moving about seeing the architect of our salvation in this moment of vulnerability. Han had carried the weight of humanity's survival on her shoulders for 3 years. She had worked impossible hours, made countless sacrifices, and endured the skepticism of those who couldn't understand her vision. Now in victory, the emotion she had suppressed for so long finally broke through. I moved to the view screen, gazing at the expanding clouds of debris where the Dominion fleet had been. A lifelong military officer, I should have felt triumph, satisfaction, vindication. Instead, I felt a deep, profound relief, not just for our victory, but for all the civilizations that would now be spared the Dominion's pacification. "Begin recovery operations," I ordered, "and prepare a status report for Earth Command." Recovery would focus on 3 priorities: securing any intact Dominion technology, rescuing survivors who had surrendered, and collecting data on the efficiency of our asteroid weapons. The information gathered would be invaluable in developing defensive systems for future conflicts and in establishing humanity's new position in the galactic order. As the bridge crew sprang into action, Cross joined me at the view screen. For a moment, we stood in silence, watching the last asteroids fly harmlessly into deep space, their fusion drives going dark as they passed beyond the kill zone. "Was it worth it?" I asked quietly. "The resources, the secrecy, the risk." Cross's gaze remained fixed on the debris field. "Ask me again in 50 years when our grandchildren are living peaceful lives in a galaxy without the Dominion's shadow." His answer captured what had always been his most defining quality: the ability to think beyond immediate tactical concerns to the broader strategic picture. Cross hadn't just been fighting to save Earth, he had been fighting to create a fundamentally different future for humanity and all other sentient species. In that moment, looking at the aftermath of our impossible victory, I allowed myself to imagine that future. A galaxy where technological superiority alone didn't determine the fate of civilizations. A galaxy where even primitive species could defend their right to exist on their own terms. A galaxy fundamentally changed by humanity's refusal to accept extinction. "We should prepare a statement for the Galactic Council," I said, turning back to my duties. "They'll want to know what happened here." Cross nodded. "Tell them humanity sends its regards, and that we're open to discussions about a more equitable arrangement in this part of space." It wasn't until later that we learned the truth. Earth wasn't the only target that day. 7 other primitive worlds, all slated for Dominion conquest, had implemented variations of Engineer Han's plan. The entire campaign, hundreds of ships, millions of Dominion warriors, had fallen to rocks with engines. The intelligence had come from Proxima Centauri, our nearest stellar neighbor, and one of the first victims of Dominion expansion. Their resistance movement, Baumage, dismissed by the Dominion as a minor nuisance, had maintained a covert communication network that spanned 17 systems. Through this network, Han had secretly shared her asteroid defense plans with other targeted worlds. Each civilization had adapted the basic concept to their own circumstances. The Arcturians had used their extensive ice mining infrastructure to create projectiles composed of frozen methane. The Centauri Collective had repurposed their orbital debris capture systems to launch artificial swarms of hyperdense materials. The Tannhauser colonists had used their gas giants' moons as the basis for gravity-assisted kinetic weapons. What united all these approaches was the fundamental insight Han had provided, that kinetic energy properly applied could overcome even the most sophisticated shield technology. By returning to basic physics, supposedly primitive species had found a way to neutralize the Dominion's technological advantage. The aftermath was more complex than our moment of victory had suggested. The Dominion's home system's learning of the catastrophic defeat fell into civil war, as power blocks struggled to fill the vacuum. Refugee crises erupted across 3 sectors as subjugated worlds rose up against their weakened overlords. The Galactic Council, long dormant under Dominion influence, suddenly found itself thrust into a peacekeeping role it was ill-prepared to handle. Earth, unexpected architect of this new galactic order, had responsibilities thrust upon it that few had anticipated. Cross was promoted to Admiral and appointed as Earth's representative to the reformed Galactic Council. Engineer Han became the head of a new interstellar defense initiative, sharing asteroid defense technology with formerly vulnerable worlds. I received my own command, the newly commissioned UES New Dawn, with orders to lead humanitarian missions to the worlds most devastated by Dominion rule. My first assignment was Proxima Centauri, where we helped the survivors rebuild what had once been one of humanity's most promising colonies. The political landscape of the galaxy transformed almost overnight. Species that had existed in the shadow of Dominion power for centuries found themselves unexpectedly free to determine their own destinies. Alliances formed between formerly subjugated worlds united by their shared experience of oppression and liberation. Earth's role in this new order was complicated. We were suddenly viewed as heroes by many civilizations, the species that had broken the unbreakable Dominion. Yet this newfound respect came with expectations that our relatively young, spacefaring civilization was not entirely prepared to meet. Some wanted us to become the new dominant military power, replacing the Dominion as the galaxy's enforcer. Others looked to us for leadership in establishing new diplomatic frameworks. Still others viewed us with suspicion, concerned that we might use our asteroid technology to establish our own empire. Cross navigated these complex waters with the same steady competence he had shown during the battle. We didn't fight to replace one hegemon with another. He reminded the Galactic Council during his inaugural address. We fought for a galaxy where technological superiority doesn't determine who deserves to exist. When the Galactic Council convened an emergency session 6 months after what was now being called the Asteroid Ambush, Commander Cross-Chief Engineer Han and our delegation were invited to explain our victory. Representatives from 100 worlds, Some allies, some former enemies, many newly liberated from Dominion oppression, gathered to hear how a primitive species had accomplished what the combined might of more advanced civilizations could not. The chamber fell silent as Cross stood to speak. He surveyed the assembled representatives, the chitinous Arcturians, the crystalline Proximians, the gaseous Jovians, and dozens of other species, before offering the simplest explanation of humanity's success. "We were never weak," he said simply. "We were simply waiting for the right moment." His words became a rallying cry for the newly formed Defensive Alliance, a coalition of 17 formerly primitive species united by their commitment to mutual defense and technological cooperation. The alliance wasn't built around shared biology or cultural values, but around a shared philosophy that every sentient species has the right to develop according to its own path without the threat of technological coercion. That was 5 years ago. Today, Earth leads the new defensive alliance of 17 formerly primitive species. The Dominion has retreated to its core systems, its myth of invincibility shattered. Engineer Han's asteroid defense systems have been implemented across a dozen vulnerable worlds, creating a new balance of power that makes empire building through military conquest all but impossible. The galaxy is still not at peace. The power vacuum left by the Dominion's retreat has created new conflicts, new opportunities for exploitation. The Galactic Council struggles to establish effective governance across such vast distances and diverse civilizations. And rumors persist of other expansionist powers watching from the shadows, evaluating whether Earth's asteroid strategy could be countered. Yet for all these challenges, the fundamental dynamic of interstellar relations has shifted. Technological superiority no longer guarantees military dominance. Primitive species can no longer be dismissed as easy conquests. The equation of power that had defined galactic politics for millennia has been rewritten by humanity's innovation. I still serve as captain of the New Dawn, though these days our missions focus more on scientific exploration than crisis response. Last month, we made first contact with a pre-FTL civilization in the Tau Ceti system, a species of methane breathers with remarkable artistic achievements. Following the new first contact protocols established after the Dominion War, we're proceeding slowly, respectfully, allowing them to determine the pace of cultural exchange. The New Dawn itself is a symbol of humanity's new approach to space exploration. Unlike the military vessels that preceded it, the New Dawn was designed primarily for scientific and diplomatic missions. Its laboratories host researchers from a dozen different species. Its diplomatic corps includes representatives from former enemy civilizations. Even its propulsion system, a fusion drive evolved from Han's asteroid technology, represents the transformation of a weapon into a tool for peaceful expansion. My daughter Maya serves as my first officer now. She was forged in the crucible of the Dominion War, but her career will unfold in a very different galaxy than the one I knew. When I watch her coordinating our diverse crew, human Arcturian Proximan, even a few reformed Dominion expatriates, I see the promise of the future we fought to create. Sometimes during quiet moments on the observation deck, I think about that day. The day the asteroids flew, the day humanity rewrote the rules of interstellar warfare. I think about Cross now serving his second term as Alliance Chairman. About Han, whose fusion drive innovations have revolutionized deep space exploration. About the billions of lives saved and the billions more that will never know the threat they escaped. And I think about the Dominion Admiral who laughed at our railguns, who mocked our primitive technology, who never understood that humanity's greatest strength was never our weapons, but our adaptability. The ability to look at a hopeless situation and see possibilities others missed. The courage to stake everything on an unconventional strategy when conventional approaches meant certain defeat. The lesson has spread throughout known space, whispered among military academies and diplomatic corps of 100 worlds. Never underestimate a species that evolved throwing rocks. The galaxy is a dangerous place filled with civilizations whose technology might seem godlike to the uninitiated. But now, thanks to what we learned in our confrontation with the Dominion, even the least technologically advanced species has a chance to survive, to develop on their own terms, to contribute their unique perspectives to the grand tapestry of sentient experience. That more than the spectacular destruction of the Dominion fleet is the true victory we achieved that day. Not dominance, but diversity. Not conquest, but coexistence. Not the triumph of superior technology, but the vindication of the fundamental right of every species to chart its own course among the stars. As I stand on the observation deck of the New Dawn, watching the strange methane oceans of Tau Ceti IV shimmer beneath us, I feel a profound gratitude for the chance to witness this new era of interstellar relations. An era shaped by humanity's most defining quality. Not our weapons or our ships, but our stubborn refusal to accept the limitations others place upon us. The stars shine differently to me now. Where once I saw only the vastness that might hide Dominion warships, I now see possibilities. New worlds to discover, new civilizations to meet, new ways of thinking that might expand our understanding of the universe. This is the legacy of the asteroid ambush. Not just a military victory, but a fundamental realignment of how intelligent life interacts across the cosmic tapestry. A galaxy where physics matters more than technological advancement, where adaptability counts for more than military might, where even the species that throw rocks deserves respect. If this story of human ingenuity against alien arrogance resonated with you, hit that subscribe button to join our community of cosmic storytellers. Leave a comment with your thoughts on how humanity might use simple physics to overcome advanced technology in future conflicts. Remember, in space warfare, sometimes the oldest solutions work best against the newest problems. Until next time, keep looking up. The stars are waiting, and humanity's greatest adventures are just beginning.